Well, hello, and thank you very much for clicking on this video today. So today, we're looking at an interesting article by Guy Smallman from the Canary, who is talking about the attacks that Israel, the Zionists of Israel, the Israeli forces have perpetrated on the many Christians in the Lebanon, and there are also Christians in Gaza as well, and kind of what effect that is having kind of on the ground, and how it's actually beginning to kind of shape and kind of change people's identities of the people that live there. And before we get started on that, I just want to go on a little side quest and just say that it is indicative of some folks that the current attacks and the killings of Lebanese Christians and Christians in Gaza as well has gotten much more kind of Western government interest than the mass genocide that is going on in Gaza, and indeed is going on against folks in Lebanon who are Muslim. But that bias obviously exists in the world, and you can see it just in the reporting. But you know what? That's not the fault of these Christians in Lebanon. You know, it's not their fault that a lot of the world is kind of thinks like that. But let's get into this. So, in the Lebanon, the ancient Christian quarter of the southern city of Tyre, known locally as Sawa, is a vibrant tourist attraction in normal times. It has a historic lighthouse and winding narrow streets that lead to its coffee shops, restaurants and markets. It is also a stopping point for pilgrims due to its significance in the Bible and two ancient cathedrals. Unlike the rest of the city, which has been partially obliterated by Israeli bombs, the Christian quarter remains untouched. Locals here have recently put the values of their faith into the practices by sheltering thousands of Muslim neighbours during the recent carnage, defying in the process the evacuation orders of the Israelis. And that is very good to see, a degree of kind of mutual solidarity between these two groups of people, because there are so many people that like to cosplay as Christians, who like to wrap themselves up in the clothing of Christianity, but actually don't commit to any of its theological doctrine whatsoever. And Jesus does say you should help your neighbours. He also says that you should help foreign people as well. I don't recall exactly what it is how he exactly puts it, but it is actually in there, and so many people just completely disregard that when they claim themselves to be Christian, just to suit their own ends. So it is gratifying to see that people are defying the evacuation orders by the Israelis and are sheltering their Muslim neighbours. So, to continue with this, in the background there have been an increased tension between Lebanese Christians, who represent the largest concentration of their faith in West Asia, and Israeli forces, who no longer seem to be confining the aggression to Shia Muslims here and Sunni Muslims in Palestine. Prior to the latest war, in late 2023, the Christian villages of South Lebanon had been actively avoided by Israeli forces. They had traditionally been seen as safe havens for women and children from neighbouring Shia areas, which had become battlefields. But the utter impunity and just the blank check that has been given to the Israeli government by the Western powers over the genocide of Gaza has really kind of shifted this. And so on the 14th of October 2024, an airstrike on the northern Christian village of Eto, I think that is pronounced, killed Shia refugees as well as many Christians. 14 women and children are among the 21 dead. Prior to this, 73 people were slaughtered in a mixed Christian and Sunni neighbourhood in El Daib, outside of Sidon. So the destruction has not been confined to the targeting of those fleeing the Hezbollah-influenced kind of areas. The Christian border village of Alma al-Shab has also been attacked and terrorized and all but destroyed due to its location, and other Christian enclaves which sit behind the occupation yellow line that Israel have in the south of Lebanon. I mean, they have basically just invaded and strong-armed basically these Lebanese government to basically just hand over this land. It then goes on to say, like Ramesh Debel and Ain Ebdel, remain surrounded by occupying forces, with the local people unable to tend to their land and are now basically dependent on aid deliveries that come from the UN. Even those who military support Western and Israeli interests have not been spared during the recent rampage, which is an important point. In the past, there have been some kind of Lebanese Christians and some Christians in Gaza as well that have been slightly more aligned with kind of Western governments, maybe slightly more aligned with Israel, but they have been with the country that they live in because of, I guess, the kind of connections, whether it be culturally or through their faith. But I've actually found out in one of the most brutal possible way that when it comes to Zionism and what the Israeli government wants to do, that they're pretty happy to kill anyone at all, murder anyone that's in their way. They're happy to do it. So, kind of going into that thing that I just talked about, it brings up here that the far-right Lebanese Forces Party, which has often been funded by people like the Saudis, has long been seen as an internal proxy for the USA-led Axis. So, as the article mentions, they were probably surprised when on Easter Sunday of this year, the local official Pierre Mouad was killed along with his wife in an Israeli missile attack on their apartment block. The area that was struck was east of Beirut, is nowhere near any Hezbollah strongholds or anything like that. Also, during Easter this year and last, pilgrims were prevented from reaching their holiest sites in Jerusalem for the first time in 100 years, and this was done by Israeli authorities. In April, there was an international condemnation of video that emerged of an Israeli soldier smashing a Jesus statue with a sledgehammer in an occupied village in southern Lebanon. You may have seen that, I don't know. It is worth noting that this is one act of vandalism that attracted a lot more media coverage in the West than the almost, as it outlines here, 900 mosques that have been partially or completely destroyed in Lebanon and Gaza. The same month, an aid convoy that was organised by the Vatican itself, had to be abandoned because it was on a mission to basically reach encircled villages. It was fired upon by Israeli occupation forces. So there's more to come. But kind of taking this all together and absorbing all this information, it is clear Zionism is a hateful ideology. They've gone after Shia and Sunni Muslims in Gaza and in Lebanon. And now, it would seem, they decided, fuck it, we've got a blank check, we'll kill everyone. Anyone that stands in our way, anyone that we feel is a threat, anyone that could object to us stealing and occupying land that is not theirs, it belongs to the people that actually have lived there for generations, they will do it. And many people in the governments in the West will just shrug their shoulders and write a blank check. So, going back to Tyre, so on the 9th of June of this year, when Israelis demanded that the historic Christian neighbourhood of Tyre had to be fully evacuated in order to strike Hezbollah infrastructure, the announcement was greeted with a mixture of disbelief and outrage. The neighbourhood is a small, close-knit community tightly packed into the peninsula that has existed for more than 200 years. It consists of Maronites, Greek Orthodox, and Catholics. At the time of the order, the area was hosting thousands of refugees from the rest of the city, in houses, tents, public buildings, and vehicles along the beach. So he then goes on to say that I visited the area with my fixer. After the ceasefire, most of the refugees had left. In the shadow of the Catholic cathedral, a sweet elderly gentleman invited us without hesitation into his house to hear his take on recent events. And he asked not to be named, but this is what the man said. We are all here for the war. These 20 houses had at least 20 people in each and tents. So many tents along the beach. They were displaced from villages. Arab people who came here by God's will. There is no difference between Christian and the Mohammedan. They were given water and shelter in people's houses. Some people rented spaces, and there were food distribution places for them. He described the evacuation order by Israelis for the entire city He described when the evacuation order from Israelis for the entire city pinged on the mobile phones of the local people, which that's a shock to get on your mobile. The whole map went red. All the people were told to leave, even though they had nowhere to go. They, Hezbollah, were not here. Our leaders had plenty to say about this. And that is really the thing. Israel always say, oh, well, we tell people to leave. We tell them to evacuate. Evacuate to where? exactly. There isn't anywhere for them to go. Well, or for a lot of people, there really isn't anywhere to go. And when it comes down to that, there have been accounts, which you may have seen, I certainly have seen them, of people that have evacuated and have tried to come back to their houses, their properties, especially in rural areas, and have then found out that whilst they were gone, Israel has basically taken the properties and their land. And so naturally, people not only don't really have anywhere else to go, a lot of them don't want to go because, like, well, if I leave and then come back, I'll find fucking Israelis, soldiers, in my house or on my land who will threaten to shoot me. So it's probably not a surprise. So the evacuation order had triggered a wave of international condemnation, with church leaders pointing out there was no military positions in the area and that it was packed with thousands of vulnerable civilians. Israelis appear, for the moment, to have backed down, and the neighbourhood and its UNESCO sites remain untouched by the bombs and missiles, but they were planning to attack and bomb these places, presumably, when they ordered them to evacuate, but only because of some international condemnation and kind of church leaders getting involved, that didn't happen. So, going to another man, a man called Thomas, another local man, showed us the dividing line between the neighbourhood and the Shia Muslim area next door. He said that both communities came together during the aggression to ensure that everyone had shelter and water in the searing heat, which had seen their air conditioning knocked out due to power cuts. He also said that people had meticulously monitored both the Lebanese and Israeli media, the latter failing to hide their increasing frustration that attempts to divide the communities on the line of faith were failing. It then goes on to say, in truth, both areas are poor, with people on very modest incomes who have been hit particularly hard by the wipeout of the local tourism community. He concluded that none of these people were armed, but in a different way were very much part of a resistance to Israeli aggression. Solidarity with the displaced has also been seen at the other end of the social spectrum as well. At a luxury resort near Beirut, the journalist goes on to say that they met an entrepreneur called Gabriel and Marie Claire. The facility had its own beach, a restaurant, a football pitch, and assortment of other facilities. Its proud owners are also pleased to be helping the destitute in their time of greatest need. Since 2024, the air-conditioned chalets have hosted women and children from the south with nowhere else to go, as Gabriel explained. Some of them have been here since the war started. They stay in the accommodation and use the kitchen. I don't ask them how long they will be here for. That would be like pouring acid on their wounds. Recently, a group of them left, and I was happy and excited for them. I thank God and the Virgin Mary that they were able to return to their homes. This is built into our DNA. We are all from this land. And then the journalist says, I asked him if he'd experienced any hostility from locals, scared that the war would follow his guests to his doorstep, and this is what he had to say. I don't really care what they think. These fears come from propaganda spread by the Zionists. My sister sarcastically asked me when I was going to become a Shia Muslim. So to reply, I just asked her when was she going to become Lebanese. So Lebanese Christians are also keeping a close eye on what is happening to their much smaller community in occupied Palestine. Many are reeling from the viral footage of a nun being attacked by an insane settler in Jerusalem. The local archbishop has also stated how he has been constantly spat at by extremists and how this behaviour is being condoned by senior members of the Israeli government, because of course it is. And most troubling of all for the isolated devotees in the South Lebanese villages are recent events around the occupied West Bank village of Taiba. It is one of the oldest enclaves in the region and is now surrounded by an illegal settler outposts. Last year, strong statements were made by the church leaders after repeated attacks. In June of this year, crops were torched and firefighters were prevented from tackling the blaze by Israeli authorities. It is against this backdrop and just the deafening lack of leadership and action from Western leaders that many church-going Lebanese people are now rethinking their previous alliances with Israel and its American sponsors. And many are now standing more and more with their Muslim brothers and sisters. The atrocities committed by the Israelis in hopes of starting a civil war, which a journalist kind of conjectures, makes the community bonds even stronger than they were before the war. So, just to kind of summarize, to kind of wrap up, I guess, when it comes to ideologies like that are basically built on hate, which Zionism is, fight me over it. Zionism, Nazism, fascism, racism, whatever ism it is, they may start with one group of people initially, but it never ends with one group of people. They widen the net, and we can see from this how attacks that mostly kind of targeted Lebanese Muslims and Muslims in Gaza as well have gradually kind of expanded into, oh no, we will attack anyone, because as far as they're concerned, they're all the same. And all these kind of ideologies kind of go down this road of starting with maybe one or two groups, but then casting a very wide net of people to attack. Because of course it is. Because they're just taking their own hateful ideology and taking it to its logical conclusion. And its logical conclusion is anyone that is not us is an enemy and has to be eradicated. And in places like Gaza and Lebanon, Israelis are quite literally eradicating groups of people, quite literally committing genocide. And so this is, I think, a very good wake-up call for people that are maybe dismissive of the issue and don't really see how it affects them. But these kind of ideologies, whether it be in Israel or anywhere else, can always kind of grow and can always encompass more people being targeted. And you know what? You may find at some point yourself being the unexpected target of such an ideology. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to this video today. I appreciate it, I do. And I will catch you on the next video. So, have a nice day. Bye-bye.